Welcome to the Insurance Agent's Role in a Dynamic Pricing Environment. This on-demand webinar will be made available to you moving forward, but if you have any questions, we invite you to submit them to our team using the form on our webinar page. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to today's first presenter, Mike Vermillion. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. Why don't we go to the first slide? And essentially, in the big picture for today's webinar is the fact that we're in this environment of rising insurance rates. It's really, insurance rates are now the fastest growing component of inflation in the US. So the question we want to answer today is how can carriers and the agents that represent them mitigate the impact of rising rates on things like customer satisfaction and retention? So let's do introductions. I'm Michael Vermillion. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Insurance and Healthcare Intelligence Practices here at JD Power. Today, we also have with us Steve Crewdson, who's a Senior Director in the Insurance Intelligence Practice. Steve, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you, Michael.
So let's dig into it. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start off by talking about the environment. And then we want to get into the agent's role, talk a bit about setting agents up for success, and then finish up with key takeaways. So insurance premiums, Steve, they're going up, and not only are they going up, they're going up at an accelerating rate. We're looking here at a chart on personal lines for auto insurance, right?
Yeah, Mike. We've pulled data for the last couple of years here, last 3 or so years on premiums for auto and personal lines auto insurance. And as you see, they've been moving up lately at an accelerating rate. The industry as a whole is grappling with, of course, the economic inflationary effects of increasing vehicle prices, especially in the last couple of years until recently, the used car prices, parts prices, repair costs, etc. But also what's been driving up the costs that insurers are incurring and thus driving up rates is the whole phenomenon of social inflation, where more claims are being litigated than in the past. And when they're litigated, those settlements or judgments are larger than they were in the past. And some of that is being driven by third-party litigation funding. So there's a lot of different components that are driving up the costs that insurers are paying on claims, which has naturally led to pressure on auto premiums.
Okay, so the question then is, what is the impact of this environment of rising premiums on things like satisfaction and then other implications like more shopping and higher number of insured? So Steve, we got some data from JD Power Research here. The first data point on the left is around the impact of prices on satisfaction. What are we looking at here? What do we mean by insurer-initiated and no insurer-initiated increases?
Yeah, so what we're looking at there is overall satisfaction scores among two groups of customers. On the top are those that were aware that their insurer initiated a premium increase on their auto insurance policy, and their overall score was a 772 for satisfaction. The other group of customers said that they did not have an increase in their premium that was initiated by their insurer, and that group had an overall score that was close to 80 points higher. 80 points on that scale is a very significant difference as well. Then off on the right, what we're seeing is as premiums have been moving up, as we saw on the last slide, you've seen some variability and some volatility in shopping and switching behaviors. What you'll see here is that in 2021, shop rates have been pretty flat. There's a little volatility, but really started to pick up in 22, spiked in early 23, and we've seen a more pronounced spike at the beginning of 24 now. Consumers were having some difficulty in early 23 finding a lower premium when they were shopping, so the switch rate actually started to move down, and that affected shopping. As consumers spent the first 6 months of 2023 shopping and not finding a lower premium, they decided to maybe pull back on that shopping behavior at the tail end of last year. And after another renewal cycle on their auto premium seeing another increase, they went back to the market in Q1 of this year with a vengeance. They set a new record for a shop rate in our list data stream. Also, what I want to point out there is in the lighter gray, we started measuring in the summer of 2022 the phenomenon of those who are driving uninsured. And the short version of that story is, as goes the shopping rate, so too goes the uninsured motorist rate. So in the beginning of 2023, we saw more drivers driving uninsured as the shopping rate went up. At the tail end, saw it go down and then back up again this year. So in other words, households are under a lot of pressure with inflation inside and outside of insurance, and they're making some decisions around paying their insurance premiums vis-a-vis paying rent or paying a mortgage or paying for other bills. And sometimes that insurance premium is not coming up at the top of the list, and people are deciding to drive uninsured.
All right, thanks, Steve. So rates are going up. It's having an impact on satisfaction. It's having an impact on shopping. It's having an impact on the number of uninsured drivers. So what should carriers be doing in this environment? And I think we could summarize it as the 3 E's. So educate, empower, and equip. So starting with education, we know from our research here at JD Power that for the most part, consumers just don't understand insurance and how it works. So the call to action here would be, let's give consumers the information they need to better understand why rates are rising. Steve, any other thoughts on this educate piece?
Yeah, really quickly, we find in many of our studies that the degree to which a customer understands their policy and what it covers is either the most important driver of satisfaction, or at least in the top 3 drivers of satisfaction. And by and large, consumers feel that they don't adequately understand their auto insurance policies, and they are certainly looking towards their insurer to help them out with that.
Thanks, Steve. Second one, empower. Other aspects of our research show that when consumers feel like they're empowered, they're more satisfied. So the call to action here would be give the consumers some options to lower their premiums. Steve, any examples of how that might work and why it would work? Yeah.
Well, some data we'll speak to in a moment here, but where specifically where agents can help is reaching out to the customer prior to that customer receiving a renewal notice or receiving a bill for their auto insurance, and having a proactive conversation around here are some options you have. For instance, changing coverages, changing deductibles, having a conversation around the discounts that the insurer offers. So in many cases, those discounts are only applied if the insurer is aware that the customer qualifies. And if the customer doesn't know that the discount exists, you're in a catch-22, right? Where the customer doesn't notify the insurer that they qualify. For instance, their teenage driver is an excellent student and they would qualify for the good student discount, or in some cases, maybe they're a member of a local credit union, and that avails them of a discount on their auto insurance. So having that conversation makes a customer feel that they're more empowered to impact what's happening with their insurance premiums. Of course, part of that too is an offer around usage-based insurance, or UBI. So empowering agents to have that conversation with a customer leads to a better relationship with a customer, a better agency experience, and a more loyal customer to the brand.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So that's kind of a setup or segue for the last idea here, which is equip. The idea here is that your channels, whether it's digital or the call center or your agents, is really how your customers and the consumers are interfacing with you and how they see you as the carrier. So the call to action here is make sure that your channels are properly equipped, especially to support those difficult conversations that are happening right now because of the pricing environment, to have that conversation around pricing and even if the customer is talking about potentially switching. So making sure that the channels are equipped there. So that's what carriers should be doing broadly. We want to double click and focus on agents for the rest of the conversation here today. So level set in terms of the importance of agents. So Steve, we know from our research that agents play a big role in terms of the overall marketplace, in terms of number of quotes provided. We know that from our research, we know consumers really like to use agents, and that experience that consumers have with agents is going to have a big impact on attrition and renewal, right?
Yeah, definitely. We certainly see that by and large, customers prefer working with an agent, especially in cases where the questions they have or the challenges they're facing around insurance and their insurance needs are complicated. Digital channels are definitely catching up over the years, but still not able to provide that empathy or the soft touch, the human touch that an agent can during a difficult conversation or a difficult experience that the customer's having. So customers are certainly still leaning into agencies, and we know that off to the right here on this slide, when they're more satisfied with their agent experience, they are much more likely to renew with their insurer. That experience of having a good touch point with the agent really reinforces the relationship between the customer and the insurer. So you see there that those are the high satisfaction rating of their agent. 66% say they're very likely to renew with their insurer, and only 14% for those who have had a lesser experience with their agent recently.
Okay, so agents and that agent experience are important. Let's now talk about the role that we would expect agents to have in helping to mitigate the impact of rising rates. So we really see this as kind of three different aspects of the role. So agents as educators, agents as communicators, and then agents as shoppers. So as educators, agents are going to be your first line of defense when it comes to educating customers, which we talked about as being important in terms of why rates are rising, and also on that empowerment piece, right? Helping the customers identify ways to save on insurance. So agents as educators, agents as communicators. So agents are in a really good position to be proactive and also personal when communicating with the clients. So oftentimes the agents are actually in a better position than the carrier in terms of this first line of communication. And then the third piece, just to remember in terms of really understanding the agent's role in this environment, especially for independent agents, they're likely going to end up being the shoppers. So when the customer is unhappy with the increase and they want to look for alternatives, they're going to ask the agent for help, right? So Steve, how would this work? The agents as shoppers. Let's look at both the captive agent part of the market and also the independent agent part of the market.
Yeah, so definitely acting as shoppers. So in the case of an independent agent, they will have likely seen that the customer will be experiencing a premium increase before the customer themselves do, and they have the opportunity there to proactively shop with other insurers that customer's book of business, and maybe find a different insurer to place that customer with, because of course as an independent agent, you'd rather maintain that business with your agency, even if you have to switch to a different insurer. As a captive, the agent can be proactive around what we talked about earlier, that education and that communication, to play an active role rather than a more passive role of just hoping that the customer has had a good brand and a good experience with the brand and will stay despite a premium increase. An agent can be that educator around why premiums are going up. We see that customers value that conversation. They can communicate around options that the customer has. And we definitely have some data we'll see here very soon that speaks to the power of having those conversations, being an educator and communicating with your customers, whether you're independent or captive, that can help retain the business.
This is from JD Power Research. We looked at the impact of proactive communications and specifically the difference between just the carrier notifying a customer of an increase and the impact of an agent actually doing the same thing. So Steve, what are we looking at here just in terms of the different slices or scenarios and what the impact of agent notification is?
Yeah, Mike, this really pays off the point we made on the last slide. So if you look at the building from left to right here, those customers that were not notified in advance, they learned about their premium increase either through a renewal notice or through a billing statement. They had an average satisfaction score of 599. That increased 67 points among those who were notified in advance. So they learned of a premium increase prior to receiving a bill or receiving a renewal notice. And what's really underneath that, if we double click into that, is the importance of the role of an agent. So when we see the insurer reached out and notified the customer, so that could be through obviously an email or a letter or other forms of communication directly from the insurer to a customer, you don't see as much lift. That group only had an average score of 652. So while substantially higher than those who weren't notified, you don't get the same lift as when an agent is involved. If we just move next to the right, if an agent is playing a role in notifying the customer, but what's important here is they didn't do that through a phone call, you get some additional lift up to a 663 score. But really the effective way to communicate a premium increase is to have the agent do so through a phone call. Of course, that enables that agent to be the communicator, to be the educator that we've talked about thus far. And the customer gets to have that conversation and they end up feeling more enabled because the agent had a live conversation with them via the phone. So our data definitely pays off the importance of an agent being the educator, being the communicator, and proactively reaching out to a customer.
So really what we would like to see is having the agents do the notification via the phone call. So that's the goal. So how do we get there? One question we think that we should be asking about agents is this: are they really fully prepared for having these difficult conversations? To answer this question, this isn't research necessarily just about agents, but more about employees in general, in terms of our employees adequately prepared to have a difficult conversation around things like pricing or potentially switching. And the research shows that only 1 out of 10 employees are confident they would actually be successful in having a difficult conversation. So why is that? What's holding people back? And it's a couple things. First, there's always this kind of fear that the consequences of speaking up outweigh the downside of remaining silent. Another reason people are not confident about having difficult conversations is they just don't like the idea of being in a conversation that would potentially be confrontational or emotional. And then finally, the research shows that employees feel like they just don't have the skill or the ability to have that conversation effectively. Steve, any thoughts on this or anything that you can relate to?
Yeah, I think we can all relate to the fact that at some point in our careers or in our lives outside of work, we know we have a difficult conversation coming up, and we maybe seek ways to avoid it or to put it off for these fears that you mentioned here. Maybe I have more to lose than I have to gain, or I'm afraid of a confrontational or emotional situation, or I just don't feel like I'm adequately enabled to have this conversation. And what we just saw on the last slide was that when an agent does proactively reach out and have what could be very easily seen as a difficult conversation, let's just take, for instance, right now, I might be an agent calling and saying to my customer, well, your auto insurance premium is about to go up 20–25%. In some cases, maybe more than that. I should expect that a customer might be emotional or feel somewhat confrontational. And I may very well feel I lack the skills or the ability to have that conversation effectively. But what we see in the data is that if I'm an agent who does proactively do that, I end up with a more satisfied and therefore a more loyal customer. So that goes back to that first point here of the consequences are actually more positive. The benefits outweigh the downsides by and large when an agent does proactively reach out and have that conversation. So we feel that agents will definitely benefit, and the carriers of the right for will benefit from agents learning more about how to have those difficult conversations and how to position them well for the customer.
Okay, so we know agents are important. We know agents should be reaching out proactively. We know there might be some hesitation because of this shyness around having difficult conversations. So how do we get agents on board with this idea? And Steve, I know based on our research, we think that the best way to get agents bought into a program where we can help them have the difficult conversations is to just connect the dots between improving their performance back to growing their business, right? So agents want help in growing their business. And we're looking at this a couple of different ways, just in terms of the type of training and also number of trainings.
Yeah, we've spent many years as a company here at JD Power serving customers about their experiences with companies, and we spent a number of years lately surveying agents about their experiences with insurers. And what we found, one of the most compelling findings we've seen in the data is that agents want help from insurers in terms of growing their own business. They know that their business will be healthier if it's growing, and that if the agent is being helped by the carrier, they really feel a stronger tie to that carrier when that carrier or insurer is helping them grow their business. And one way that manifests in our data is that agents definitely value training from insurers, but when that is the right type of training. A lot of insurers are focused today on product training, and what we see in our data is that at best that doesn't hurt the agent's perception of the brand, but in many cases it actually does hurt the agent perception of the brand, that they're getting maybe too much product training, they're not getting enough help in terms of training on how to grow their business. And CX training, as we know, is one way to help grow the business. And as you see here on the left, that the lift in satisfaction when training is provided to agents is a lot greater when it is either CX oriented or helping them in a way that helps them grow their business. And off to the right, a lot of agents are not getting training directly from the carrier right now. About half are telling us that they're not. They haven't attended any training recently from the carrier, and you can see the satisfaction score there among those agents is about 130 points lower than those who said they recently attended 3 or more trainings from the carrier. And again, double clicking into that, when the agent is telling us that training was not necessarily product training or the traditional training they'll get from a carrier, but training that helps them grow their business, training that helps them have better conversations with their customers, that is even a greater lift on satisfaction.
So we're going to take a step back and talk about training in general and how to think about it. We want to start with kind of the answer at the end in terms of, what is the business case for training, and specifically training agents on how to have difficult conversations, just deliver a better customer experience in general. And so our thinking, our experience shows that it's really kind of 3 buckets here. If you invest in this kind of training, first of all, you're going to have better agents and stronger relationships. So those agents are going to have enhanced confidence, or be more motivated. They'll be establishing stronger customer relationships and increased productivity. On the customer side, your customers are going to be happier, more satisfied. There's going to be a deeper level of trust. Higher loyalty and advocacy would be an outcome of that. And then finally, just in terms of the numbers and the business case, it's a positive ROI. Measure it in things like revenue per agent, lower attrition, revenue growth from advocacy and upsell, cross-sell, and even higher share of wallet with agents. So that's kind of the answer, the business case, the ROI. Let's now step back into what it would look like in terms of a training program. So here's the approach that JD Power takes to training agents around customer experience, and one aspect of that is enabling agents to have those difficult conversations. So let's start with the first piece, content. So we've developed a comprehensive library on training for customer experience. It's based on JD Power data, JD Power research over the years, and it's really focused. The lens we use is really what matters to customers, and starting there. In terms of design, which is the next piece, we want to be super thoughtful in terms of how we design the training, with this idea that for training to be effective, you're trying to change behavior. So we want to leverage the best practices for behavior change. We bring to the table world-class instructional experts, and then we make it modular to enable flexible delivery. which is the last piece, the delivery of the training. So for the JD Power programs, we can come at it different ways. We can do train the trainer. We do live workshops, and we've got an online capability that's self-paced. The other part of delivery for training is the reinforcement aspect, and reinforcement can be done through the website, through an app, or even through text messaging. Okay, so that's what we wanted to share today. Let's just kind of recap with some of the key takeaways. So the first one being that we're in this very dynamic pricing environment, and it's causing customers to take action. So we can't sit on our hands, right? Agents, we talked a lot about this, how important the agent's role is in mitigating the impact of price. We talked about how getting agents on board requires offering them meaningful support, including CX training. And like we mentioned, meaningful support from the agent's point of view is how is this going to help me grow my business? The ideal training solution is going to meet the mark for things like content, design, and delivery. So that's kind of the framework to use when you're looking at training options. And just want to keep in mind that we do here at JD Power have a turnkey solution to empower agents to handle difficult conversations. And finally, taking action now is super important because it's going to help deliver higher satisfaction. It's going to help reduce shopping and switching. So Steve, anything to add here in terms of the key takeaways from the conversation today?
I would just add that if you think about this idea of training agents to have those conversations and provide a better experience, we think that all three parties involved, the insurer, the agent, and the customer, all win in the end. So if the customer is more satisfied, they have a better affinity for their agent, and if they do that, they also have a stronger relationship with the insurer. That relationship that leads to more business, it leads to more retention with the customer. But all around, by providing that better customer experience, we see the customer win, we see the agent win, and we see the carrier win. So we definitely encourage insurers to take a look at the concept around CX training with the agent, and look at ways to help both the customer, the agent, and also that carrier come out ahead.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to turn it back to our host, who's going to tell you a bit about where to go for more information on agent CX training and next steps.
Yep, thank you. And thanks everybody for tuning in to this on-demand webinar from our JD Power Insurance Intelligence team. If you do have any questions, or if you'd like to engage with the experts to talk more about agent training, please reach out to our team members listed on this page here. And you can also subscribe to our mailing list or check out our website for more information. Thanks once again, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.